Welcome to this week's special video. We're starting a new series. So we're going to do themed weeks going forward, and this week's theme is security. We want to kick it off with the absolute basics of security. So we're going to look at computer security basics for your small business. We want to see what do you absolutely have to have, what can you avoid, and most importantly, what is most important? If you could only focus on one thing, what should it be? So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my slide deck, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So we're going to begin with the very basics here for computer security. This is absolutely the essentials of what your small business needs. There's a whole lot more we could layer on top. The important thing to remember with security is that certain things that you add are additions, and that doesn't mean you can remove other pieces. You're adding layers to that security piece, and the more layers you have, much like a bulletproof vest with all those layers of Kevlar, the stronger it is, the harder it is for people to break in, steal your information, cause data breaches, that sort of thing. But for what we're going to look at today is the absolute basics, kind of an intro 101 for computer security. And in addition, we want to set this for the very basics for your budget. So if you're really budget constrained and you say, hey, look, I've only got a little bit, I need the bare minimum I can get by with, well, that's what we're going to cover today. Now, before we get into the basics, let's look at some statistics. $36,000. Now, that is the average cost of a recovery from a data breach. And that is for a small business. This is not some big enterprise we're looking at. These are all small business statistics. $36,000. The amount of new malware released for the last year that we had it available, which is 2015, 430 million. Now, what's interesting about that is that that was a 43% increase over 2014 in the number of new malware, which is your viruses, your spyware, all that sort of stuff, all those malicious programs combined. 43%. So if we say that we had even half that increase in 2016, that's pretty big. Let's say that we had a 22% increase in 2016. That number is going to skyrocket in the new amount, which makes it tougher than ever to protect your business from all these threats. I mean, 430 million new pieces, that's not total malware out there. That is brand new in 2015. And finally, lest you think that you're safe from cyber attacks because you're a small business, you're not the Pentagon, you're not a big corporation that may present such a lucrative target, well, 43% of cyber attack targeted small businesses according to the information I could find. As a matter of fact, some sources peg that closer to 60%, but I'm just going to go with the low figure. 43%, which is almost 50%, is still an incredible amount. So your small business is vulnerable. There's just no doubt about it. So what do? Let's begin with the most important thing for cybersecurity, and that's employee education. It says it right there in the subtitle. Don't do another thing before you do this. This is absolutely the most important thing. People ask me all the time, they think I'm going to say something like antivirus, firewall, some sort of fancy security appliance or something like that. And those sorts of things are great. In fact, antivirus and a firewall we'll talk about here in a minute as being essential. But employee education is number one, because what we've seen with these new breeds of malware is that they're targeting your employees. They're coming in through email, they're coming in through websites, they're coming in with email attachments, looking to be a sales order, a resume, you need a password reset, we need to verify your information, hey, this wire transfer needs to take place. You name it, the criminals are thinking it up, and your employees are your first line of defense. Let's look at this a little bit more in detail here. You can't overlook this. This is something that I know takes some time and some practice and some patience to educate your employees. It's not some software you install in an afternoon. Employee education is very much an ongoing thing. There's things you can start with, but if you don't continue it with the amount of new threats, 430 million going back, brand new in 2015. That's incredible that you would have that much there. And so if you just say, hey, I'm going to take some time off, we did training 2 years ago with the staff, well, you're going to have staff turnovers, you're going to have all sorts of new and evolving threats. So it's very much an ongoing piece that needs to be done. And one of the basic things that needs to be done is basic computer literacy. I'm sorry to say that in too many clients that we serve, there are many users who are not just maybe uncomfortable with the computer, which, hey, I totally understand. There are a lot of things that I'm uncomfortable with. But we've gotten to the point in business and really in life where you have to be able to use a computer at least somewhat, and you have to be able to exercise some common sense, especially with emails and things like this that come in. Your employees really are that first line of defense. You have got to educate them. You've got to let them know, hey, here's who you report something suspicious to. Don't just click that link. Don't just send a password. Don't just open that attachment. Check with somebody. And this is crucial now that we've got ransomware. Ransomware is on the rise. It's wreaking havoc for businesses large and small. I mean, you've got hospitals and police departments that are having to pay the ransom to get their files unencrypted. That's how big it's gotten. And those are largely spread through email. Email's just one of the biggest attack vectors we see for these new types of malware, especially ransomware. So you've got to do that employee education. And I'll talk more about it towards the end here, but we've got a ton of resources on this, and we're continuing to develop new content. Because, as I said, this is the number one thing that needs to be done. So we're pouring all our efforts into making sure that you can educate your employees. You can give them training videos. You can give them some resources that we've got available, and we're going to help point you to some other things from a bunch of other people that do great work in this field. So now let's look at what other basics are. The employee education is our foundation, so let's build upon that. Well, we've got suspicious emails. This is a big one, right? Suspicious emails. As I mentioned, the new attack vector is very much email. And that's a problem because we all know we get way too many emails. And so it's just habit to respond to things, to open up attachments and see what it is, to just click a link if somebody says, hey, password reset. Well, I don't remember requesting that, but maybe it came through. Maybe I do need to do something. If you don't do any training on this, you're going to be in a real tough pickle. Spam filtering's a big piece of it. That's what's going to help you. But spam filtering alone won't catch everything. And some of these are getting real sophisticated. They are looking really good. We've had a few come in recently where clients have forwarded it to us, and thankfully they didn't click. But I even had to spend a few minutes looking through. It looked legitimate. It addressed them by name. It addressed one of their offices and maybe one of even their staff members in the email. Some cases look like a complaint coming forward. That's some good research by the malware creators. Let's give them credit. I mean, that takes the cake. So you've got to be careful, and you've got to ultimately be suspicious yourself. Be skeptical of the emails that you get. Don't just automatically say, oh yeah, this seems legitimate, or Jerry always sends me attachments. I'll just open up this one that I wasn't expecting. Be skeptical, be suspicious, and don't be afraid to reach out to people and say, hey, did you actually send me this? Malicious websites. Oh man, those are on the rise. And not just from going to a Google search result. This is what we've seen with a lot of our users, is that they'll be searching Google, they'll click a link, and boom, they've been to a malicious website. A lot of antivirus software out there helps to put like green check marks or red X's next to bad sites and green check marks next to good sites. But not everybody has that, and even then they can be tripped up. And the worst part is a website itself being malicious is bad enough, but a lot of what you see are legitimate sites, and I'm talking major sites, Yahoo, CNN, those sorts of things, big sites, that because they use third-party ad services, somebody introduces malware into the ad. So the banner ads you see around there, they'll introduce malware into that. And so just by visiting CNN.com and going to a page on there, all of a sudden you've gotten an infection on the computer, and it may be spreading to the network. It's really severe at this point. Personal use of devices. Now, this is a big thing. So this is for the typical small business that has a computer system that an employee uses, and the computer system is not brought by the employee. Somebody's not using their own laptop. It's a desktop or a laptop that the company owns. A couple years ago, if you would have asked me about this, I would have said, sure, let an employee go ahead, check their personal email, do the things they need to do on there, as long as it's not interfering with the job you need them to do. But the landscape's massively changed. We've seen too many people get infected from doing innocuous things like checking their personal email. Like I mentioned, go into Yahoo, go into CNN. Now, occasionally going to CNN might be part of your job, but in most cases it's probably not. These sorts of personal uses make it easy for malware to be introduced onto the systems. Facebook was a big attack vector for quite a few years. That's been less so recently, but it's not to say it won't start back up. And as I mentioned, those malicious ads are a big driver of this malware increase. So it's important that you just have a policy. Set some guidelines. You can choose what you want. I honestly recommend at this point just saying only for business use. And then if you happen to go to a business website or you're doing a Google search for something business related and a virus comes up, we can only do so much. But when you've got people checking their personal email, checking Facebook, that sort of thing, it's not so much a productivity concern for me as it is a security concern at this point. And the fact that with this ransomware, you're down for a day or more, and that's if you have good backups. These are serious impacts to a business. It's not just one computer that's isolated on anymore. And with everyone having a smartphone, a lot of people having tablets, if you want to be generous, I say let your employees bring those in, and they can go ahead and browse their personal stuff during their designated break times or whatever the case may be on there. So they've got their personal email on there already. They've got their Facebook on there already. Let them use that. Don't use the office computer. All right, so now we're getting to these building blocks. We've got our foundation with employee education. Let's look at these building blocks. And these are things that you absolutely must have. These are absolutely non-negotiable. We're going to look at some additional steps here shortly, but these are things you've got to have, and chances are you do, but I just want to review just to be safe. So antivirus software, this is a big one. Hopefully you've got it. The most important thing is it needs to be up to date. You get those yearly upgrade renewals, or maybe you up for 3 years and then a few years later that says, hey, you need to upgrade. Don't neglect that. You saw that statistic. 430 million new malware instances released in 2015. That's a staggering number. So if you go even a month or two without updated antivirus, it's really like not running it at all in a lot of cases. And get a good business class antivirus. I don't have a specific recommendation other than I would recommend staying away from McAfee. We've seen issues with that particular vendor. This is subject to change. 6-12 months, McAfee may be on top. There's a lot of change in the antivirus vendor space on a regular basis, which is why I don't make a specific recommendation, but stay away from free antivirus and stay away from McAfee, even the McAfee business product, but get a business class antivirus. Don't just get what you would pick up at Staples for your home computer. You just need the business version. It's going to cost a little bit more, but it's going to provide much better protection, especially against threats that are going to target your business specific. You also need a firewall in place. Now, chances are you've got one of these. Can't imagine you don't anymore. They're just tacked on to your router, even your modem in a lot of cases. And what a firewall does is it keeps out intruders from outside your network. So basically from the internet trying to probe into your network. So think hackers, even nosy kids, just kids trying to figure out what they can do and what they can get into from wherever they are. Believe it or not, that's a big problem for causing not just problems for your company, but if nothing else, just getting in. You don't know what they've seen, and that's a data breach, and you don't want the hassle of that. But now with a firewall, you want to make sure that you don't use whatever the internet service provider gives you, and you don't want a consumer router. So you don't go to Staples or Best Buy to pick up a router for your business. You need to order these things. You can order them from Amazon, so there's certain retailers that do. You need to expect to pay at least $200, probably closer to $300 for a decent firewall router combination, and that's still not state of the art. There's still certain areas you can improve in, but for the absolute basics, especially if you're budget constrained, get a business class firewall, and that'll run you about $200 to $300. Spam filtering. Talked about those suspicious emails. Spam filtering is not 100%. Antivirus isn't 100%. Firewalls aren't 100%, but you still need these things. Without them, you've got 0%. So you need some sort of spam filtering service. Ideally, you don't take whatever your email vendor gives you, especially if you're using it through like your internet service provider or your website provider. That's who your email is hosted through. You need a third-party spam filter. Microsoft Office 365, Google Mail, their Gmail product for business. You can try to get away without a spam filter there, but I still highly recommend a third-party spam filter. They're ridiculously inexpensive, just a small per-user monthly charge, and it's that additional protection. You need that spam filter. And I know it's frustrating when occasionally a legitimate email gets caught in your spam filter queue. You don't see it right away. Somebody gets frustrated, but unfortunately, that's just the world we live in. Spam filter providers are getting better at weeding out those false positives, but it's just going to take time, and there's always going to be something that the spam filter may miss or it may catch that actually is legitimate. Something you need to put up with. You need that spam filter in place to protect you. With email being the way that hackers and these virus writers are trying to get in and infect your systems, you've got to have another defense with your email, and that's your spam filter. So where do we go from here? These are some additional steps you can take. Now, the third one is not an additional step, and we'll talk about that again here in a second, but you can get a security audit so you can find out how vulnerable you are. Are you missing some patches? Is your firewall not configured correctly? Is it not even a very good firewall? If somebody wanted to get in from the outside, how hard would it be for them to do that? These are not that expensive, a few $100s typically, but they're well worth it for that extra security that you need and for that peace of mind, and also just to let you know. I mean, you don't know what you don't know, and security audits can help you know, at least, even if you can't afford everything right away, okay, this is what we need to work on, this is what we need to concentrate on. And if you're subject to HIPAA, I've got some bad news for you. You've got to have one of these audits at least once a year. It's non-negotiable. It's got to happen. And certain other security regulations, finance, all that sort of thing, you're going to require these as well. So check to make sure that if you're subject to any sort of regulations, HIPAA, Sarbanes-Oxley, that sort of thing, that you go ahead and find out whether security audits require. Because the last thing you want to find out is if you have a data breach and you don't have a record of having done that audit, you'll get fined massively more because they're going to fine you for negligence and not following the proper procedures there. Web filtering. This is something that a lot of businesses look at and then inevitably it kind of gets dropped. There's certainly, just like with spam filtering, there's some false positives there. This lets you control what sites your employees visit. It can prevent time wasting and certainly decreases the potential for malware infections. I'm a big fan of this for layering on top. I'm not a fan of it for how it's often sold, which is the time wasting piece, because employees, especially bringing their smartphones, they're going to find ways to waste time if they really want to. They'll find ways to get around that web filter, that sort of thing. They'll just disable Wi-Fi and hook up to their cellular network. But for that additional layer of security, it is fantastic. And the few false positives it gets, most of the stuff we see is very minimal now. It's just highly recommended. So now this third piece, let's talk about employee education. Again, that's how important it is. You need to get started with this as soon as possible. We've got a ton of free resources available to get you started. You can go visit our website and click on Tech Tips. We've got several things there. We'll post new content there. And I'm going to talk about some of the other ways you can keep informed with what new stuff we're putting out. Because, of course, as soon as we put something out, within a few weeks, the way technology changes, the way these new threats emerge, there's something else that we've got to add, something we've got to change, some tweak we've got to do. So you can keep informed of what we're doing here, and I'll talk about that in a second. Now, I'm Chris Michalek. That's who's been talking here. I've wanted to put this towards the end because I wanted to get you the content right away. It's less important who I am, and it's more important that you know what we've been talking about. But please don't tune me out. I got a couple of important things to say. I'm the president here at Parkway Technology Solutions. I've got over 15 years experience in IT. We've served a variety of businesses in the Piedmont Triad area across industries, so we have a good lay of the land, know exactly what works and what doesn't. You can find me there at my Facebook page. Feel free to send me a friend request. I don't mind accepting those, even if I don't really know who you are. I'd love to interact with you, get to know you better. That's the best way to get in touch with me. And then, if you want to keep in touch with us, know more about what we're doing, here are some ways. So on Facebook is one of the most popular ones. That's one where we're the most active, I would say. So you can like our page. You see the address right down there, facebook.com/Parkway Technology. And you can keep up with what we're doing. We post the content on there. We've got regular things. This is a regular series. Once a month, we're going to touch on security, but every week we've got a different topic, a different video, that sort of thing. So we definitely got a lot of stuff out there for you. So encourage you to take a look there. YouTube is another great area. We've posted all our videos there. You can see I took a screenshot of the page and put it up here. This is a great thing. We've got regular features, things like spam spotting, which will help your employees and yourself detect spam and know what to look for so you know what is and isn't spam. You can get that. youtube.parkwaytech.com will redirect you to our YouTube page. Twitter, we're fairly active on as well. And so there you're going to get some articles that we share. We don't do that so much on Facebook, and obviously nothing like that on YouTube. And you can also interact with us, send us messages, that sort of thing back and forth. We've got our Twitter handle right down there. And we're on a lot of other social media channels. I'm sure I'll be introducing other things going forward, but those are the main ones that we're on. So like our Facebook page, keep up with us on YouTube. We're going to keep you informed with great free content like this to help protect your business. And we're going to also look at other topics, productivity enhancements, digital marketing, employee management, all sorts of things like that. So I hope you found a lot informative here. We packed quite a bit into just a little bit over 20 minutes, but we wanted to get you the basics, and we know you're busy. You don't have time for a huge long webinar of an hour or anything like that. So this is just the basics. These are the building blocks to help you get started, make sure you're on a proper security footing, and protect you from the majority of threats out there. If you enjoyed this video, would you do me a favor? Would you please share it out? Let people know about it. Send somebody a link to it if you must, and just let them know it's out there. We want this resource to get to as many people as possible. I'm Chris Michalek with Parkway Tech. Again, thank you so much for your time and attention and watching, and look for more on our Facebook page.